Lincoln High School's annual Veterans Day Assembly was supposed to be a celebration of service and sacrifice. Instead, it became the scene of an incident that would make national headlines, end a career, and reveal a shocking family connection that no one saw coming. What you're about to hear happened on November 11th at 10:30 a.m. in front of 800 students, teachers, and parents. It involves Officer Dale Morrison, a school resource officer with a history of complaints, and Marcus Thompson, a 16-year-old honor student whose only crime was standing up for what was right. By the time this story ends, you'll understand why the video went viral within hours, why a decorated military leader risked his career to defend a teenager, and why sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody expects. Before we dive into this extraordinary story, tell us, what city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. We love hearing from our global family. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep this storytelling journey alive. Your support truly keeps us going. Now sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for a story that will stay with you long after it ends. Officer Dale Morrison, 48 years old, white, has been the resource officer at Lincoln High for 6 years. Morrison comes from a military family but never served himself, something that's always bothered him. He's built like a linebacker, stands 6 feet 2 inches, and uses his size to intimidate students. Morrison grew up believing respect comes through fear. His father was a drill sergeant who ran their household like a boot camp. Morrison joined the police force at 22, spent 15 years on patrol before becoming a school resource officer. He sees his role as maintaining order through authority, not building relationships. The school has received 17 complaints about Morrison's excessive force with students, particularly students of color. Each time, the incidents were deemed, within policy, by his supervisors. Morrison has developed a reputation for targeting kids he considers troublemakers. Marcus Thompson, 16 years old, junior class president, captain of the debate team, 4.0 GPA. Marcus is the son of Lisa Thompson, a nurse, and was raised by his grandmother after his father died in Afghanistan when Marcus was 8 years old. Marcus stands 5 feet 8 inches, quiet but confident, with the kind of natural leadership that makes other students look up to him. He volunteers at a community center, tutors younger kids, and plans to study political science at Howard University. His father, Staff Sergeant Michael Thompson, died in an IED explosion while serving his third tour in Afghanistan. Marcus keeps his father's dog tags and wears them under his shirt every day. He's never known his father's commanding officer, only that he was highly decorated and respected by his unit. November 11th, Veterans Day Assembly. The gymnasium is packed with students seated on bleachers, parents in folding chairs, and teachers standing along the walls. A stage is set up with American flags, a podium, and chairs for distinguished guests. The guest speaker is supposed to be a retired colonel, but there's been a last-minute change. The new speaker is running late due to traffic from the airport. Principal Rodriguez announces they'll begin with the student presentations while waiting for their special guest. Marcus is scheduled to read a poem he wrote about his father's service. As he walks to the microphone, his classmate Sarah whispers that her phone is missing from her backpack. She's upset because it has photos of her deceased grandfather that aren't backed up anywhere. Marcus sees Officer Morrison roughly searching through another student's belongings near the back of the gym. The student, Jamal, is protesting his innocence, but Morrison is aggressive, dumping out Jamal's backpack and scattering his belongings on the floor. "I didn't take anything," Jamal says, but Morrison pushes him against the wall. Marcus faces a choice: give his presentation and ignore what's happening, or speak up for his classmate. Looking at his father's photo on the memorial display, Marcus makes his decision. Marcus approaches the microphone, but instead of reading his poem, he speaks directly. "Excuse me, Officer Morrison, but Jamal didn't take Sarah's phone. I saw her put it in her locker before the assembly." The gymnasium goes quiet. 800 people turn to look at the confrontation unfolding in the back. Morrison's face reddens with embarrassment and anger. "Thompson, sit down and mind your own business," Morrison barks. "It is my business when you're falsely accusing my classmate." Marcus replies calmly into the microphone, his voice carrying throughout the gym. Morrison storms toward the stage. Get away from that microphone right now! Principal Rodriguez stands up nervously. Marcus, perhaps we should. No, Marcus says firmly. This is exactly what my father died fighting against. Abuse of power. Bullying. Using authority to harm innocent people. The crowd murmurs. Parents pull out phones to record. Teachers exchange worried glances. This isn't going according to plan. Morrison reaches the stage, his hand on his taser. You're disrupting a school assembly. You're under arrest. For what crime? Marcus asks, still holding the microphone. Disorderly conduct, disruption of school activities, resisting authority. Marcus doesn't move away from the microphone. I'm exercising my First Amendment rights at a public school assembly. I'm standing up for a fellow student who's being harassed without cause. If that's a crime, then arrest me. The tension in the room is electric. Students are on their feet, some recording with phones, others shouting support for Marcus. Teachers are trying to maintain order while parents demand to know what's happening. Morrison grabs Marcus by the arm, trying to pull him away from the microphone. Marcus doesn't resist violently, but he doesn't comply either, classic passive resistance. Let go of me, Marcus says clearly into the microphone. I haven't committed any crime. Morrison's training should kick and de-escalate, call for backup, handle this professionally. Instead, his ego takes over. He's being challenged in front of hundreds of people by a teenager, and his authority is being questioned. You want to be a hero? Morrison snarls, pulling out his handcuffs. Let's see how heroic you feel in juvenile detention. The crowd erupts. Leave him alone. He didn't do anything. This is wrong. Marcus's mother, Lisa, pushes through the crowd. That's my son. What are you doing to my son? Morrison sees the crowd turning against him and panics. This isn't how school discipline is supposed to work. He's supposed to have authority, respect, compliance. Instead, he's facing an organized rebellion led by a 16-year-old. Everyone sit down and be quiet, Morrison shouts, but nobody listens. Marcus looks out at the chaos, at his mother's terrified face, at his classmates standing up for him. He thinks of his father, of the values he died defending, of what leadership really means. Officer Morrison, Marcus says into the microphone, his voice steady despite everything. My father died fighting for the freedoms you're trying to take away from me right now. He died so that Americans could speak truth to power, could stand up against injustice, could live without fear of their own government. Morrison loses it completely. He grabs Marcus roughly, slamming him against the wall behind the stage. The microphone falls, creating a loud feedback screech that silences the room. Morrison has Marcus pinned against the wall, his forearm across the teenager's throat. Marcus isn't fighting back, but he's not giving in either. He's looking Morrison directly in the eyes with a calm confidence that unnerves the officer. You think you're tough? Morrison hisses. You think you can disrespect me in front of all these people? I think, Marcus says quietly, loud enough for nearby people to hear, that you're proving exactly what kind of person you are. Morrison pulls out his taser. The crowd gasps. Several parents start pushing forward, but other officers have arrived and are creating a barrier. Tase a kid for speaking at a Veterans Day assembly. Someone shouts. See how that looks on the news. Morrison realizes he's crossed the line, but he's too committed to back down now. His career, his reputation, his authority, everything depends on showing these people that he's in charge. Final warning, Thompson. Submit to arrest or face the consequences. Marcus closes his eyes for a moment, and when he opens them, there's something different there. Not fear, not defiance, but a kind of sad understanding. Officer Morrison, my father's commanding officer, once told his unit something that I think you need to hear. He said that real strength isn't about making people fear you, it's about earning their respect through your actions. Your father was a loser who died for nothing. Morrison snaps, immediately regretting the words as soon as they leave his mouth. The gymnasium goes dead silent. Even Morrison's fellow officers look shocked. You don't speak ill of fallen soldiers at a Veterans Day assembly. You don't attack a Gold Star family. Marcus's eyes fill with tears, but his voice remains steady. My father was Staff Sergeant Michael Thompson, 3rd Infantry Division. He died serving his country with honor. He served under Secretary of Defense James Mitchell, who called him one of the finest soldiers he ever commanded. The gymnasium doors at the back of the room open with a loud bang. Everyone turns to see a man in a perfectly pressed military dress uniform walking purposefully down the center aisle. He's older, gray-haired, with ribbons and medals covering his chest. His bearing screams authority, not the kind Morrison tries to project through intimidation, but the real thing earned through decades of service. Behind him walk 2 men in dark suits, clearly Secret Service agents. The man approaches the stage, and his voice carries without a microphone. Officer Morrison, step away from my soldier's son. Now. Morrison turns, still holding Marcus against the wall. Sir, this is police business. I need you to. The man reaches into his jacket and pulls out a leather case, flipping it open to reveal his identification. Secretary of Defense James Mitchell. That young man's father saved my life in Kandahar. He died protecting our convoy from an IED. And you just called him a loser who died for nothing. The color drains from Morrison's face. He releases Marcus immediately, stumbling backward. Secretary Mitchell continues up to the stage, his voice now filling the silent gymnasium. Staff Sergeant Michael Thompson was awarded the Bronze Star posthumously for his actions that day. He threw himself on an explosive device to save 6 other soldiers, including me. He looks directly at Marcus, and his stern expression softens. Son, your father would be proud of how you conducted yourself here today. You showed courage, dignity, and leadership under pressure, exactly what he taught his soldiers. Mitchell turns back to Morrison, and his voice becomes ice cold. Officer Morrison, you have just physically assaulted the son of a fallen hero at a Veterans Day assembly. You threatened a minor with a taser for exercising his constitutional rights. And you dishonored a decorated soldier's memory in front of his family. Secretary Mitchell addresses the crowd, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding respect from world leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. I was supposed to speak here today about the meaning of service, about the sacrifices our military families make, about the values we defend. I never expected to find such a perfect example already taking place. He gestures to Marcus. This young man just demonstrated everything we tried to teach our soldiers: moral courage, standing up for others, remaining calm under pressure, and honoring the principles his father died defending. Mitchell pulls out his phone and makes a call. General Patterson? This is Secretary Mitchell. I need the FBI's Civil Rights Division to investigate an incident at Lincoln High School in Atlanta. Yes, immediately. Morrison realizes his career is over. Not just his job as a school resource officer, but any future in law enforcement. You don't survive assaulting a teenager in front of the Secretary of Defense. Mr. Secretary, Morrison stammers. I was just trying to maintain order. Order? Mitchell's voice cuts through the gymnasium like a blade. Son, I've maintained order in war zones, in disaster areas, in situations where actual lives were at stake. What you did here wasn't maintaining order, it was abusing your authority to silence someone who made you uncomfortable. Mitchell turns to the crowd. This is what Marcus's father died protecting: the right to speak truth to power, the right to stand up for others, the right to live without fear of government intimidation. Today, his son honored that sacrifice. The gymnasium erupts in applause. Students are on their feet, teachers are clapping, parents are cheering. Marcus stands beside Secretary Mitchell, overwhelmed by the moment. Principal Rodriguez approaches nervously. Mr. Secretary, about Officer Morrison. Officer Morrison is no longer your concern, Mitchell says firmly. He'll be dealt with by federal authorities. What you should be concerned about is how a decorated soldier's son was treated at your school. 1 month later, Officer Dale Morrison is facing federal civil rights charges. The video of the incident has been viewed over 5 million times. He's been terminated from the police force and will never work in law enforcement again. The investigation revealed a pattern of abuse targeting minority students. 7 other families have come forward with complaints. Morrison's supervisors who ignored previous incidents are also under investigation. Marcus Thompson became a national symbol of young leadership and moral courage. He's been invited to speak at military academies, received scholarship offers from 12 universities, and was named Youth Advocate of the Year by the NAACP. Secretary Mitchell established the Staff Sergeant Michael Thompson Leadership Scholarship in Marcus's father's honor. It provides full college funding for children of fallen service members who demonstrate exceptional character and courage. At the scholarship announcement ceremony, Secretary Mitchell shared the full story of Marcus's father's sacrifice for the first time publicly. Staff Sergeant Thompson saw the IED first. He could have taken cover, could have saved himself. Instead, he threw his body over the device, absorbing the blast that would have killed 6 soldiers. In his final moments, he asked me to promise that if anything happened to him, someone would look after his boy. Mitchell looked at Marcus, who was sitting in the front row with his mother and grandmother. I kept that promise by staying in touch with your family, making sure you had what you needed. But son, you didn't need my protection. You already had everything. Your father gave you courage, integrity, and the strength to do what's right even when it's hard. The ceremony ended with Marcus reading the poem he never got to deliver at the Veterans Day Assembly. My father died a hero's death, in service to his land. He taught me strength comes not from force, but from where you choose to stand. Today I stand for justice, for truth, for what is right. I stand because he cannot, I am his living light. Marcus is now a freshman at West Point, following in his father's footsteps. He keeps his father's dog tags, not hidden under his shirt anymore, but worn proudly where everyone can see them. Secretary Mitchell retired from government service but stays in touch with the Thompson family. He speaks regularly about the incident as an example of why leadership must be earned through character, not enforced through fear. The real lesson of this story isn't just about standing up to bullies or honoring our veterans. It's about the power of moral courage, the importance of speaking up for others, and the truth that real authority comes from service, not from the ability to intimidate. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is a 16-year-old with the courage to do what's right. Sometimes the most important speech isn't given by the guest speaker, but by a student who refuses to stay silent in the face of injustice. And sometimes, when you stand up for what's right, you discover that your father's legacy has been protecting you all along in ways you never knew, through people you never expected, creating moments that define not just who you are, but who you choose to become. Marcus Thompson learned that day that his father's sacrifice wasn't just about saving soldiers in Afghanistan. It was about ensuring that his son would grow up in a country where a teenager could challenge authority, defend his classmate, and know that somewhere, someone with real power would have his back. That's what freedom looks like. That's what service means. That's what heroes died protecting. If this story of courage, justice, and standing up for what's right moved you, then you need to subscribe to One Heart Stories right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell because we bring you the most powerful true stories that will restore your faith in humanity. Stories like Marcus Thompson's remind us that heroes come in all ages, and sometimes the smallest voice can create the biggest change. One Heart Stories, where every story matters.